Hi guys, and welcome back to the second part of this two-part video where we are making a kusudama starball. If you followed the first part of this video, you already have 30 of these guys ready to go. If not, be sure to go back to the instruction video and learn how to make the individual units for the ball. And once you have 30 of these, come back here and we'll get the model assembled. When making this project, what's really nice about this one is that it's very easy to assemble with or without glue. You can assemble it into a bunch of different forms as well. This is the dodecahedron assembly. So let's head over to the desk and get this thing assembled. All right, so now we're on to the fun part. We've made our 30 units, and now we're going to assemble them so that it's going to look like this. For the most part, this is pretty straightforward, and the assembly method can vary a bit depending on what shape you make. This is my favorite one though, so I just really like this one. It's really easy to do. So I have a couple of other tools here. So this is some glue that I'm going to use to help aid in assembling the kusudama. This is not required. You can assemble this one pretty easily without glue, although if you're doing a smaller one, the glue might help hold it together a bit easier. But if you're doing one the same size as me, which was 3" by 3" squares of paper, or about 8 centimeters, that should be okay. Over here, I have some little tiny clothespins. These also aren't required, but they can help with keeping the pieces attached to each other while they dry, or while you're assembling them. If you don't have these, you can also use some smaller size binder clips or maybe even some paper clips. I think I got these at just a regular bookstore or stationery store. They weren't very expensive. They were only about £2. So I do think these are a pretty good investment if you're going to make more than one of these projects. They've done me a lot of good over the years. As you can see, I have these in different stacks. I have these in stacks of 5 units each. I like to do that because you tend to arrange them in groups of 5. You'll start with one group of 5 units. The next stage will be 2 groups of 5 units. The third stage will be another 2 groups of 5 units. And the last one will be a single group of 5 units. So I like to keep them organized like that so I can keep track of where my units are and keep a good count on them in case anything goes missing while I'm assembling. Let's get started with the fun part. I'm going to scoot these over to the side. So let's go ahead and take these out and get them all laid out. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take 2 units, and where these tabs are, here and here, you're going to slide your tab into where they meet. So you can already see here that these things are coming together along this crease. Okay, if you're using glue, now's a good time to slide that glue in, just a little tiny drop. You don't need much at all. Just make sure it's coming out. Okay, you can just press that for a second. Again, you might not need too much glue for this, so if you have any excess, feel free just to wipe it away. Be careful if your paper does have a bleeding dye. If you wipe away, it could smear it, so just keep that in mind. Cool, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our third piece and see this crease here. We're going to slide in the tab. It's okay if you have to force it in a little bit. You're going to put it in right there. Get it to align with that crease like you did on the other one. You're going to take a little drop of glue. You're going to put it in. Give it a little press. Hold for a second. Okay. Now we're going to introduce the clothespins just to keep things in place and so don't accidentally move any of them. So I'm just going to add this one clothespin, the first one, to keep that from moving around while I fill out the rest of the first cycle. So now we're going to come in and we're just going to follow that pattern around on this outer crease. We're going to start sliding in our pieces, these tabs, and getting that first crease to align with this last crease. If you're adding glue, a little drop of glue, pinch, hold, then we'll add our last piece. So for this glue, this is just regular Elmer's glue or craft glue. I got these little bottles on Amazon with this little needle point on it, just so I could slide, into those little crevices on the projects and make it a bit easier to get in. If you look at the actual bottle, the nozzle's a bit large. I don't think it's going to go in there very well, so I thought it would be easier to use something like this. to get a nice needle point. Cool. Now that I've held that for a second, this is the first part. As you can see, we have 5 pieces, so that's all you need for the top of this kusudama. So now we're just going to have to complete the cycle. So we'll undo that first clothespin we put in here. We're going to wrap it around, and so before we tuck anything, you can kind of see the shape that it needs to be if you just wrap it around and align those creases. If you're using glue, this part is going to be a lot easier, especially if you've waited for all those other ones to dry. If you're not using glue, you might need to be a bit careful doing this. Some of your pieces might pop out. You might have to readjust them once you get them in there, especially these little points up here. Sometimes they can hang. But once you get that in there and adjusted, what you can do is hold that with your fingers. And then if you're using glue, go ahead and slide in a little drop there. Pinch. Hold that for a second. And as you can see, we already have the top of our kusudama. So that's the tip of the star. This is where things start to get more fun. This is where origami meets Lego in my mind. So we're going to take our next group of 5, and we're going to start to fill in the sides of this ball. So I'm going to take one point of these 5 hanging tabs, and I'm going to stick this one in here so that the tabs covering this second crease from the inside. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of glue here, and this is where these clothespins come in a lot of handy, because now you can kind of fix these while you're working around the rest of the ball. Clothespin in action. Now we're going to take our next piece, and we're going to just work around. We're just going to work around the star and do the same thing for each one. Tap in, align the points of the star, make sure everything looks okay here. Glue, press, clothespin. Glue, press, clothespin. It's a little mantra that you can try and recite as you're doing all of these. Glue, press, clothespin. We're going to get our next point of the star. We're going to slide tab in so it meets this first long crease. Then we're going to apply our glue. Going to press it. And then clothespin. Slide the next one in, working around. Glue. Press. Clothespin. And then we're going to take the last one on this last star, we're going to slide it in here. Press. Clothespin. Right. We're going to go ahead and see these now. We have these 2 dangling pieces meeting each other. These 2 pieces actually join to each other, so we can go ahead and combine those. You can do this along with the previous step, but to keep the video simple and easy to follow, I've decided to do it in 2 separate steps. So let's go ahead and take this. What you're going to do is we're going to remove that clothespin that we had in here. We're going to have this dangly one. We're going to have the one that we just joined. So there's 2 units here and 1 unit here. These 2 units need to go on top of this 3rd unit, or the single unit, and then it's going to follow the same step. You slide the tab into the piece, and you get those 2 creases to align. Then we're going to go dab of glue, press, clothespin. That looks a lot less chaotic, doesn't it? So it's starting to come together. You can already see we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points around this top point. We'll start working around the star and doing that. Slide, glue, press, clothespin. Slide, glue, press, clothespin. 2 more to go. Slide, glue, press, clothespin. Last one. Slide, glue, press, and then clothespin. All right, so we now have the entire top portion of the kusudama, as you can see here. This one's going to be a bit bigger than the one I showed off earlier, which is not a problem. I think it would actually make potentially some nice additions to my desk. So now that we have the top part of this, we're going to start working around the sides and filling out these remaining stars here. All right, so let's come into, so each point has 5 units that wraps around. So we're going to start working around and adding a new unit to each of those points. Let's go ahead and add in this guy here. Just slide in, same procedure as before. Some glue and press. Hold that for a second. It's going to be kind of hard to get a clothespin or a clip in there if you're using some of those. So this one we're just going to hold. Give it a nice press, just so that it's a little bit set. We're going to work around the star now. We're going to take our next unit, slide it in, align it. So if you want really pointy stars on the end, try and align those so that they're as close as possible to the tips here, and that these centers are overlapping here. As you can see, you've got these little tri-float things going here. So go ahead and slide in some glue. And work around. Everything looks aligned. Add some glue. Press to the next one. So it's something quite meditative, I think, about putting these together, because as you can see, it can get quite repetitive, but it's but each repetition is building onto something that was already here, and that is kind of the satisfying part about this. It is the same putting everything in together, but you are changing the shape in a different way each time as well. So for the last piece on this round, let's go ahead and bring in the thing, close that guy in, line everything up. Press it really well. All right. Before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and remove all the clothespins that are on this model. So if we flip it over, to do that, you can see that we've got some nice stuff going on. We've got a little bit of a spiral going on in here where the tips are. See this little spiral, a little bit of a spiral. We've got our star shapes and our pentagons, which makes sense because that's how we're arranging everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove these. So I mentioned these things kind of go together in groups of 5, followed by 2 groups of 5 and 2 groups of 5. So the next one you could do 2 at the same time, kind of, and add 1 to this tab, and then add this one. But I'm just going to keep them separate for now. So as before, we're just going to start wrapping around these stars. So here you have 2 options. You could add this tab into this, or you can add this tab, which I like to do, into the existing structure. So I'm going to take, I like to kind of wrap these units around. So we're just going to pick one of those points. This is where things get a little bit flimsy for now. Everything will firm up and get stronger as you start adding the rest of the pieces, but just for now, this is going to be a bit unstable. So we're going to take this, and we're going to add just a teeny bit of glue. We're going to make sure it's aligned well and press it. Now on smaller models, if yours isn't as big as mine, you can get a clothespin kind of in this little area and hold it together that way, but it's not going to be necessary for this one, so we'll just leave that for now. So we're going to continue to work around the square. We're going to continue to work around the star, not the square. Oh my god, what is this? Kindergarten. Alright, so we're going to come in here, we're going to slide it in. Gentle fingers. Same way you slid in all the other ones, just in a different position, or just in a different point of the star. Squeeze a little bit of glue in. Press it. Don't be afraid to put your hands on the inside of the star to get in here and do that pressing action. It's not going to fall apart. All these slots are holding everything in together with friction, so as long as you don't pull anything, it's probably going to be okay. Okay, we'll continue to rotate around. Slide in here. And line everything up. Add some glue. And press. Slide, glue, press. Slide, glue, press. All right. Move it around the star. Got that all on. Then we're going to come in here. Give it a little press. Then we're going to go ahead and add in this last one. Slide it in, make sure it's aligned, and add that last glue in. Press it nicely. Cool. All right, now things are really starting to shape up, and this is probably my favorite part of the entire project, besides maybe the very end. So now we have the fun challenge. So we do have our 5 units here already, but now we need to link this one up with this one. So we're gonna have to wrap each point around with that small tab to fit into where it should on this last one. So this one, you may need to be a bit careful while you're doing it. Just be careful that you don't pull any of the existing ones out of place. If you're using glue, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, especially if you've waited longer than me and let it dry. But if it does happen, it's just kind of reassembling it and trying to get it in the right place. So it's not the end of the world. You can get everything back in. You just might have to go back a couple of steps. Once you got the glue in there, go ahead and press, hold it, and we'll start moving around the star. So you can, so if you notice in this, we're wrapping everything, well, as I've already said probably a million times, for each of these stars they have 5 units wrapping around. You can also make this one where each of the stars is, or each of the points is only 3 units. And so instead of the 12 points that we'll get in this final model, you get 20 points. And so that one is quite striking, and you can get something that's really cool, especially for models that are about this size. For the smaller ones, I think this one tends to look better, but for the bigger ones, the longer spikes, and a lot of them can be quite an interesting effect. The assembly method on that one is a little different. It follows the same kind of principles, but you just have to make sure you connect the right pieces to each other so that you if you guys are interested, I can always make I can make another video going over how to assemble the icosahedron version, the one I just described, as opposed to this one, which is the dodecahedron. But sometimes it's kind of fun to figure out how to put them together on your own. That's part of the challenge. But it is nice to have that reassurance that you're doing it correctly. That unit wasn't very good, but that's okay. You won't notice that at the end. Or most people won't notice it. Cool. All right, so now we've gone through all 5 of those points. They're all together. We're now in another place where we have these 2 pieces dangling off each other. So we're going to go ahead and connect those. But I just want to take a moment to mention, I think I've mentioned before in a previous video where I created Christmas ornaments out of this model. And so if you would like to create a Christmas ornament out of what you're making now, this is a good point. So what you can do is you can take some wire, and you can take, if you have a hot glue gun or something similar, basically you can make a little hoop to stick through the top, and then you glue it in from this bottom part right here. So this is probably a good time to do it because the model is still open, but soon, once we close it up, it'll be really hard to get in here. So you can add a little hoop in here, and then you can add a Christmas ornament hook off the top so that you have a new custom Christmas ornament. Cool. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and connect these 2 pieces that are hanging off, doing that same slide glue press. And we're going to reintroduce the clothespins here just because I like using them. They're not entirely necessary for this model, but it helps keep things neat. I think the nice thing about this, because everything kind of wraps around, it's kind of harder to make assembly mistakes because they can only insert into each other in one way. For example, you can't, trying to insert this left one into the right one would not work. So the only intuitive way to go is right into left. At this point too, I think, and for some of the rest of the assembly, it's going to be easier to kind of let the points of the star hold it up rather than you holding it in the air. So you can kind of use that to position everything once you've got the glue and the piece inside itself. So we got those 5 pieces all attached to each other, and as you can see here, or as we've already discussed, this is 2 units. So the obvious steps are we're going to need to wrap the pieces around and fill out the rest of this. So this will be quite similar to that second one. So the pieces here will connect across, and we'll go ahead and start working on that piece in a second. You can see here, it looks like we already have a completed model if we just ignore the back part, but it's starting to shape up. Cool. All right, let's get these pieces going. I'm going to slide this into here. About here in the project is when things are going to start sturdying up a bit over the next couple steps. So if you feel like you're unsure whether yours is going to stay together, don't worry. This is the part of the project where that stops being so much of a problem. So we're just going to continue working around the star, adding in a new piece so that those points on this layer are now 3 units. If you've already done this model or the icosahedron or the 20-pointed star one, there is supposedly, I have not attempted it, there is a 90-unit version of this that you can make. I think it might be a buckyball, but it sounds quite. It's apparently, well, there's a picture of it in the book. It looks quite cool. It'd probably be massive though. Probably would be the size of a soccer ball or a football. But if any of you guys decide to get adventurous and make one with 90 units, I'd love to see some pictures of it, because I don't know if I have the patience to do one that would take that long. But I think some of you guys might have a little bit more patience than me. It wouldn't take much. Okay, we've added our 3rd unit, so now we're going to repeat kind of what we did on that 2nd layer. We're going to attach these dangling bits to the star next to it. So that's going to turn these 3-unit points into 4-unit points. So if you're worried about missing one or missing a group of 5, don't worry, you're not. That's kind of the cool part about this layer, is they all come together. Just going to go ahead and remove the rest of these clothespins so they're out of the way. The clothespins things, again, like those are completely optional. On a model this size, actually, they're not really needed, but I'm just kind of trying to show how you could use them if you feel like yours isn't staying together very well while you're assembling it. Some paper too doesn't have a lot of friction, and so the pieces will slide in and out of each other quite easily. There's, in that 20-pointed star model, that one has a lot of, because there's only 3 pieces per unit and they're in a triangle shape, there's actually quite a lot of force pushing against that shape, so the pieces will slide out of each other more easily if you aren't careful. So it's just something to know how to use. It's not required at all. Maybe it just makes me feel like it's more difficult than it actually is. Okay. so this is the last one here. So you can see here when I put the glue in, the pieces aren't quite aligned. So I'm gonna try and fix that before getting the glue pressed in there. Okay, so this is, so we've got those four, there now each of these points is 4 units, so we're on to our last group of 5. If you look on the inside, we have pretty much a star right here, and then you can see the nice star on the inside as well. But this is why I mentioned before, if you wanted to do a Christmas ornament, the last layer was a good time to do it, because now it's a bit harder to get towards that other side. Cool, so this is the second to last part, is getting these 5 units into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to do similarly to how we did on this second layer, is we're going to add into here and make these units all have 5 units inside of them, but we won't fully connect them yet. We'll come back to that in a second. So I guess really there's 3 main steps left, but the last step is really fun, so please hang on until then. Especially if you're making one of these, because it'll be worth it, I promise. Alright, so we're just gonna slide these in and work around. It's a bit harder to get to press the pieces together if you're using glue for this one, so just be gentle. But otherwise it should be mainly okay. What can help is to go ahead and pull that tab that you're going to wrap around on top to kind of suggest the shape that it's going to take, and you can even go ahead and remove that clothespin, and that'll kind of help hold it in place. If you're getting to this point, you're probably starting to notice all the imperfections that crept into your individual units, and if you're not super precise, and that's okay. I feel like pretty much every time I make one of these, I start to notice how dissimilar a lot of the units ended up being, even though I thought I was being almost doing the exact same steps at the with the exact same, or as close as I could get. That's kind of the it's noticeable to you right now, but once you're done and you haven't looked at it for a bit, you'll kind of forget about those, and it's okay that it's a bit imperfect. That's kind of part of the beauty of these, is that you're making something that looks precise, even though it's still got a little bit of that human error in it. Got some wabi-sabi going on. Okay, the last unit. So as you can tell, once you've added the last unit, everything is not nearly done. You still have all 5 stars in this layer aren't done, and the final star is also not done. So let's go ahead. So you get this one in place, locked in. Let's remove this clothespin. All right, and get this layer on top. Okay. Great. So it should look like this. Don't worry, you haven't done anything wrong. So we're gonna go ahead and close off all the stars on this layer, and then we'll work on this last star, which is the most challenging part of the whole project if you're not careful. So let's start working these points in. These should be mainly okay. They should already be mostly in place anyway. May have to gently nudge to get things in. These ones you can add glue and do a little gentle press, but you won't be able to press on both sides as easily unless you have tiny fingers or you're working with a really big size of paper. So I'm just adding it for because I've already done on all the other stars, and it would make me feel weird to not. But if you feel like it's not going to help, then you can skip it. The next door dog has just started howling. Don't know if you guys can hear that. Okay, I think just one more to go. I think the last half is interesting because there's obviously as much assembly going on, but it feels like you're not adding as many pieces in this last piece and this last portion. So it's kind of interesting. I think that the beginning, or I guess this is almost like the last third of the project is getting all these last pieces connected, even though you've used all your pieces. Anyway, so after that ramble. Now we're going to work on the last part, which is the star. Now, if you are using glue, do not glue these pieces yet. So this last piece is a bit finicky. So if you glue too soon, in my experience, you can actually kind of create some imperfections that are a bit more noticeable, and they're harder to get rid of because the glue may have already set before you finish. So what I would do is I would set the glue aside. Then I would focus on getting this star connected first. So similarly to the rest, everything does wrap around in that clockwise structure. So we're gonna try and get that clockwise motion going with these pieces so that we can kind of start to link everything up. Make sure no pieces are really inside of each other. If you're struggling or that part's not really working how you want, kind of like mine isn't really working like that right now, you can kind of see the spiral, but they're not outside of each other at all. What can help is to do a group of 2 and a group of 3. So you slide in 2 of these. So there's part of the star. Let's go ahead and make this a group of 3. Okay. That's partially in there. Let's go ahead and make this group of 2. Okay, so now you have this group and that group. So now the only trick is getting this piece outside, hopefully without undoing everything you've already done. And if you have, just try and gently nurture it back into place. And then at this point you can kind of start working all the other tabs into each other. You may have to adjust and re-put some back in place, but you're almost there. Once you get everything inside, then you can start to gently force those tabs into place. Working around the spiral, around the star. There is the only goal is to get them all in place. So if you want to go in a different direction or you want to do it a different way, totally allowed to do that. So now you can see we have kusudama is done. We're just going to go ahead, since we are using glue, go ahead and finish up this last piece and slide some in there. Give it a nice little press. Slide the nozzle in here. Press. Slide the nozzle in here. Give a little press. Nozzle in here. Give a little press. And I think we may have already done this one, but we'll do one more. Give it a little press. Okay. So move the clothespins out. Move the glue out of them. Now we have our kusudama. Cool, great. I hope you have one too, and you were able to follow along and do all the instructions for this video. If anything was unclear, feel free to ask some questions down in the comments, or if there's something you would recommend doing differently, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. But yeah, so otherwise, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for making your first kusudama or your subsequent kusudama if you've made one before. And yeah, see you guys later. Thanks.